Thank you to all the members for supporting my channel. Hi there. Recently, I did a little fun experiment. I wanted to play through Genshin again and see what it was like as a new player, and I did this for a few reasons. If you've been playing Genshin for a long time, it's very highly probable that you've tried to get your friends to play the game only for them to play it for a week and then immediately drop it and move on. I would know, because I've tried to do the same thing. And I am always told the exact same things every time I try to get somebody to play. The game is too hard. The game is too confusing. There's too many mechanics I don't know about. I'm not doing enough damage. There's too much content to do. It's overwhelming. I don't want to play it. Whatever they say. Now, me personally, I've been playing Genshin for 4 years. When I first started playing Genshin, there wasn't actually that much to do. Maybe 50 hours of content and then you were done. It was basically a normal game. But nowadays, there is so much content that you could start playing right now and it'd take you about 700 hours to get it all done. Now, granted, not all that content is good content, but granted, it is still content. So I was curious, and I just decided, hey, I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is, and I'll make a new account, and now that I'm about a month into this little experiment, I just want to give my opinions to you as to what I think Genshin is like for a new player. Of course, from the perspective of a day one player. First things first, I just want to talk about the story. A lot of people say Genshin is a story game, and if you don't like the story, you shouldn't play the game. And now that I've replayed through the whole game from the very beginning, I just want to say, you're wrong and you're stupid. Sorry, I broke character for a little bit there. The narrative isn't really anything that's special for quite a while. It does have some really high points. Obviously, Fontaine and Sumeru are amazingly well-written stories that stand alone by themselves, but in the vast narrative complexity of Genshin's story, the story only exists as a device to bring you from place to place and give you a reason to, get this, explore. Yeah, it's almost like that's in the name. Open world exploration game. Going through all of the story, and yes, I did do all of the story, Mondstadt, Liwa, Inazuma, Natlan, Sumeru, and Fontaine in that order because I waited until after Inazuma to do Natlan. It only took me around 35 hours to get all of the story content done for the game. The main story, that is. The longest quest was of course the Desert King and the Three Magi, which took around almost 3 hours to fully finish, and the shortest quest was the final act of Mondstadt, where you go to fight Mr. Dvalin himself. It only took a little under 30 minutes to fully finish. One of the main things I hear from new players is that the main story is very underwhelming, it's not interesting, and I'm going to have to be honest, I agree, but only for the beginning. Mondstadt's story as a whole is very, very isekai cookie cutter slop, and if you disagree, come on man, like come on, this is not the hill you want to die on. There are so many other good stories in Genshin. It's not good. It doesn't make a good first impression. The voice acting is really iffy, a lot of the main narrative beats aren't that interesting, and the main quest, again, it feels very isekai. And with the main demographic of people that play Genshin Impact being gacha fans, I can understand why they would get bored and drop off very quickly, because yeah, it's just boring. It's slop. I've done this song and dance 100 times. I've watched every isekai, and I get it. However, basing the whole game's story off of just Mondstadt is kind of cringe. One thing I really appreciated replaying through the game like a new player, finally got to sit down and enjoy a lot of the game's story quests a second time. And there were a lot of parts of the game that really surprised me. Like, for example, the Raiden Shogun questline in Inazuma is so much more impactful if you can do it all at once. I'm not gonna lie, the first time I played through the Inazuma story quest, I did not give a damn when Teppei died. I just couldn't care, because I had completely forgotten who he was, because you need to remember, there was a 6-month gap between Teppei's original introduction and his dying moment, which you can't really blame me for, because Teppei at the end of the day is just an NPC. He doesn't even have a unique model. But getting to watch him in real time slowly fade away due to the delusion was a lot more impactful, especially because I didn't have a 6-week gap to forget about him. On top of that, Inazuma just had a lot of really cool moments in general. It is very, very, very poorly written and falls apart if you think about pretty much anything that happens on screen for more than 5 seconds, but it's still cool to witness as long as you don't think about it that hard. Also, it is very short, like very, very short. The entire Inazuma Inazuma questline can be done in 3 hours, which was a pleasant surprise. And then obviously there's nations like Sumeru, which, I'm not gonna lie, when I first did Sumeru originally, I didn't really care that much for the story because I was kind of burnt out on Genshin. But I got to replay it through it again recently, and it was very fun. I still think the Sumaru's festival is kind of aggravating, and King Deshert being name dropped 50 fucking times, like we didn't hear it the first 49 times, is kind of aggravating, but other than that, it was really good with a very satisfying climax. And then obviously, of course, Fontaine, which is just amazing. Fontaine has easily one of the best stories in Genshin, and I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to spoil it, because unlike every other region, I have respect for Fontaine, alright? If you haven't done the Fontaine story, you're fucking up, and you need to go do that right now, because that shit is peak. And I know I'm cursing a lot, but I just need to push in your head how peak this writing is. And getting to experience it again myself without having to watch it on YouTube was very, very fun. And I will admit, you know, I did tear up near the end, but that shit is just so fire. That being said, even though I admit that these are some really cool beats to this story, as a new player, it is a slog to get through that beginning portion, especially because of the grind, which you knew this was coming. You do not unlock universal access to every quest in the game until you are AR 40, which that's not that big of a deal until you realize that it takes you around either A, 3 weeks of playing the game to get to AR 40, or B, massive amounts of grinding. It was very frustrating for me as a day one player who knows where to loot all the good spots in the game to have to continuously leave the story and go do exploration that I didn't really want to do because I just wanted to finish the story, which means that Genshin is detrimental in 2 ways to new players. Way number 1, it just doesn't allow them to experience the story they want, while also souring their mood on exploration by giving them a negative first impression that it is a chore that has to be done before you can do the main exploration. And while it may only be a small percentage of people that feels this way, it's still not a good look. Now, me personally, and a lot of people that play Genshin, I like to think, you're playing the open world exploration game to explore, and there is a lot to explore. And despite what some people who play Star Rail and like to dog on Genshin would say, the rewards for exploration are very good. In just 1 week, I was able to scrape together well over 400 summons from exploration alone. I have already 100%ed Natlan, 100%ed half of Inazuma, and I've 100%ed all of Mondstadt. But I'm not a good example because I know where the chests are. I'm really good at sniffing out loot. But the thing is, even though I was enjoying the grind, it was still that, a grind. I wasn't exploring because I wanted to in that moment. I was exploring because the game was making me. And you have to explore a lot in order to break the main AR requirements to get through the next threshold for story quest. To put in perspective just how much you have to explore, my Mondstadt was 57% explored, my Liwa was 62% explored, my Natlan was 100% explored, and my Sumeru was 30% explored before I finally reached AR 40. That is not counting the EXP you get from main quests, side quests, character quests, and world quests, which also equated to the value. It took me almost 300 hours over the course of 4 weeks to get to AR 40. Now, how much of that 300 hours is idle time? I don't know. Let's just narrow it down and say that it was 150 hours to be safe. That is still a ridiculous amount of time to be grinding for a new game. So again, I don't blame players who are new to the game for there being just such a ungodly amount of work you need to do in order to explore. And that gets me to the next problem for new players. The backlog of quests in this game are insane. Here's a good example. I really wanted to explore Sumeru because Sumeru is what gives you access to some of the best free-to-play weapons, which, when you're new to the game, you probably want to go after, like the Sapwood Blade. But in order to do that, I needed to explore the Aranara questline, and some of you veterans just shivered when I said that. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. As much as I want to praise Genshin for the good game that it is and get new players to play it, I'm going to be the first to admit, I did not finish the Aranara questline. It was too long, it was too boring, and there wasn't enough going on to keep my interest, and even though I knew the reward at the end of the tunnel was worth the grind, I just could not be fucked. Pretty much the whole region of Sumeru is like that, and there's a lot of areas in other regions that are also locked off behind quests. A lot of Fontaine has regions that are locked behind quests, and a lot of Inazuma has areas that are completely bricked off or made damn near unexplorable unless you do quests. Good examples that come to mind are Enkonomiya, the Chasm, pretty much all of Karasumi Island, the Fog Island, the Lightning Island. You have to do major world quests that can take you multiple hours just for the region to not have some ridiculous hazard that kills you for existing in it. If you want the whole map to be open and explorable, you are looking at almost 150 hours of world quests you have to do. And a lot of these world quests have little to no impact on the major narrative of Genshin, which is what a lot of people say. Oh, it's the story, it's the lore, it's important. A lot of the shit that they say is not important at all to the major overarching narrative. It's just filler. And not only that, none of it's voice acted, which means that 70 to 90% of the community is just straight up going to skip through it. But I didn't. I read all that shit, but I kept exploring. I kept grinding, because despite what a lot of people may say, I do like Genshin. It's a fun game. I've invested a lot of time into it and I enjoy it. And even though I say I have these problems with it, I'm still going to keep playing it because I enjoy it. And eventually, I got to AR 45, and this is where the final thing comes in. Genshin's difficulty is kind of insane. Like, it is such a massive level curve that a lot of players wouldn't know about because we've been playing since day one and we've had plenty of time to adapt. You do not know pain until you are stuck in a 30-minute duel with an elite enemy because he keeps popping a shield, you break it, and then you don't deal enough damage to kill him in time. It is boring. A lot of the combat in areas outside of Mondstadt and Liyue, God forbid you leave those two regions in your first 10 hours, is just tedious because you either A, don't have good characters to do elemental totems and elemental puzzles, or B, the enemies you are fighting are so heavily HP inflated that it's very hard to do significant damage to them. And I would know because I had to play Kaya. Your main prerogative as a new Genshin Impact player is to get your hands on a new 5-star DPS as quickly as possible, or your introduction to the game is going to suck, because a lot of early combat, like a lot of new players say, is just boring because you are having to slowly chip away at these iron walls that take almost no damage from you because they've been HP scaled to match full-on team comps with characters like Nuvolette and Arlanchino. It is so bad that I basically am telling you that until you get to AR 45, and hell, even sometime after you get to AR 45, you are going to be doing damn near no damage and you're just going to have to get used to it. By the time you do get to AR 45 and you unlock good artifacts, the enemies are so overwhelmingly powerful that you are going to consistently fall in dungeons. And I know that because, like I said, I've been playing Genshin for a very long time. I know the game well, I know it like the back of my hand, and I am struggling to farm artifacts so that I can get my team up. I'm doing what I know to be the most optimal route to make your account as powerful as it can be as quickly as possible, and I'm getting my ass handed to me. So I don't blame new players who have never played Genshin, who are bored of the game, for quitting at this point, because it's not a fun experience. I would say the game doesn't really begin to shine and you're able to fully do whatever you want to do without trouble and explore the open world until roughly AR 50. By then, your talent should be relatively high level, you should have good artifacts, you should have at least one team that's well built enough to at least stand a chance in the overworld, and that's it, you're done. But until that point, it is very hard, so please, if you are an old player and you know people who are getting into the game and they're telling you they're having problems, cut them some fucking slack, because I'm telling you, it is not as easy as it used to be when me and you started playing the game. It's rough for a new player. With that all being said, would I say I had fun? Yeah, no shit, I had fun. I wouldn't have played it for 300 hours if I wasn't having fun. Do I recommend it to a new player? Maybe. It's really hard to say. If you're up to the challenge, then yeah, go ahead, play the game for the first time if you haven't. But just remember, it's going to be an uphill battle. That all being said, like, comment, subscribe. See ya.